Good to go.
Okay, I just have to continue on mine. Okay.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another live community classroom with Michaels. Today we have Tamara from Moogly. She's with us here for another exciting class in the Great Caron Cake-Off. Today we'll be adding surface crochet to the Catch Some Waves knit blanket as our icing on the cake. My name is Lillian from Yarnspirations, and I'll be helping with any questions you might have during today's class. Feel free to ask questions in the chat here and we'll be sure that Tamara answers them. While we're giving you some time to join the class, feel free to let us know where you're watching from. And just a reminder that today's class is being recorded and you can find the recording at michaels.com/classes.
Hey everybody, like she said, I'm Tamara from Moogly, and I am here. I get to teach the first class for the Great Caron Cake-Off 2020. And I'm super excited because this is my first Caron Cake-Off too. So it's the first chance I've gotten to use these Caron cakes. They've been out for a couple years now, but I'm just falling in love with them and they are so cool. If you guys haven't been over to your local Michaels or michaels.com to check out the Caron cakes right now, they are awesome. There's a whole variety. There's a ton of different kinds of cakes. This is a regular cake. I've got here, this one is one of the Caron big cakes. You can see it's that much bigger. There are so many different kinds of cakes. So like I say, you can see them at your local Michaels store, or if you're like me, doing curbside pickup, they will bring them right to your car. I just got a big bag of them thrown into my trunk last week. It was very exciting. So basically, what is the Caron Cake-Off? If this is your first one like me, it is an awesome contest at Michaels. They've got this amazing display of Caron cakes in their store and they want you to use them. But you can make whatever you want. You can make the amazing patterns that are linked at the Caron Cake-Off page on Michaels. You can make whatever pattern you want. Just use these yarns, upload a photo to the Michaels website. Again, go to the Michaels link, upload your photo, and you could win prizes. And these prizes are amazing, like jaw-dropping amazing. The grand prize winner is going to win, I have to like take a deep breath before even I say this, 500 cakes of Caron Cakes yarn. 500 cakes. I can't even, honestly, I would have to like literally get out 500 cakes and lay those out to see what that looks like. I think it would be like a pallet of yarn. That's a crazy amount of yarn, you guys. So that's a huge, huge prize. In addition to the yarn, the winner will get a 1-hour virtual meet and greet with, it says their favorite influencer, but it has to be either me, Marley Bird, Mikey from the Crochet Crowd, or Sarah from Repeat Craft or me. All of them are awesome. They would all be amazing picks, but you know, it is limited to those 4 people. So please don't ask for Martha Stewart. If you figure out a way to get Martha Stewart, then you have to invite me too, because I'm coming to that one. So anyway, that's the grand prize. There will also be 4 finalists, each of whom will win 50 cakes of yarn. So still, I mean, that's like a grand prize in and of itself to me. That's a huge, huge, huge prize. So generous, and such an amazing event that Michaels and Yarnspirations work on together every year. So that's the contest portion of the events. There's also 8 free new patterns, and around those patterns, we're putting on 8 classes. This is the first one, and I'm going to be going over how to add surface crochet. And the other classes are all going to talk about other embellishments that you can add to your finished crochet or knit projects. Now, these icings on the cake are not required for the Caron Cake-Off, but they are a fun way to personalize your projects. The holidays are coming off, it's a big gifting season, and you may want to make those gifts that you're hand making this year just a little extra special, maybe add your own personal touch to those patterns, and there are so many great ways to do that. So like I said, today we're going to be talking about surface crochet. And yes, we're doing it on a knit blanket. You can do it on knit, you can do it on crochet, you could probably do it on a woven fabric if you are a weaver, if you've got something beautiful that you have woven in yarn. As long as you can get a crochet hook and yarn in there, you can put surface crochet on it. And with the surface crochet, you are essentially drawing on top of the fabric. Now, this is the knit blanket for today's class. Like I said, I'm not teaching you how to do the knit blanket, but there is a free pattern for this on yarnspirations.com. And it's a blanket, so I'm going to sit back here a little bit so I can hold it up so you can see just how beautiful it is. Isn't that gorgeous? What a stunning blanket. Absolutely beautiful. Now, it doesn't need embellishment, but of course, we all like to dress up our projects and add our own personal touches, whether it's the color we use or that final little edging or whatever it is. And this is what I've done on this. And I'm going to ask you to excuse the edges, or the non-woven in ends. This beautiful blanket was designed and made by the Yarnspirations design team. not by me, so I need to send it back. So I didn't weave in my ends because I want them to be able to take out my embellishments if need be. But obviously when you do these, you would weave in your own ends. So that's just my little disclaimer up front there. So here, if I hold it up in front of the camera, and we'll be getting here on this overhead camera in just a few minutes, but you can see here, I've just added a very simple little M with surface crochet. And you can see on the back, end's not woven in, but you can see on the back, it just creates a very simple line on the back of the fabric. So with surface crochet, you can write letters if you wanted to add initials. I think, you know, for weddings, baby gifts, things like that, people love having those monogrammed initials on there. You could do it in any style you like. You could draw a picture. You could make a smiley face. You could draw a mountain range. Really, the sky's the limit. You just need your imagination and your hook and your yarn. So if we go ahead and come on over here to the overhead camera, we'll try and get a little closer look. This is a blanket, so I have to kind of fold it up and arrange it a little bit here. But we'll come on over here if we can switch cameras, please. Let's see. Oh, there it goes. All righty, probably just a little delay. Sorry about that. All right, so again, here's a closer look at that M. And I chose to draw an M because it's an M for Moogly. And it was just a really easy shape too. I was able to use the lines and the design of the blanket itself to help me guide my letter shape. But of course you can, like I say, take off in any direction. This was just a really handy way to use this pattern. If you are using the surface crochet on something with a pattern like this, whether it's chevron or something else, you can use those little clues to kind of help you plot out whatever you are using your surface crochet with. You can also use stitch markers if need be to let you know I want to start here and end here and then turn here, just to sort of help you plot out where you're going ahead of time. So I'm going to go ahead and just turn this blanket around to another corner, because that's the joy of blankets, right? We'll just turn it around to another corner and we'll do some more of that surface crochet here. So let me find a good corner. I always like to go to the bottom right corner, but I don't know why. That's just a personal preference. You could obviously go wherever in that piece you want, any old place you like. Now this blanket is made with, turn around here, the regular Caron cakes. And to do the surface crochet, in order for it to show up, what you would need to do is either pull out a color that, you know, isn't going to be in that section you're surface crocheting on, otherwise it is going to blend in, or you can use an alternative color. And just another color, it could be a little bit of stash from your, you know, just a little bit of scrap yarn from your stash. It could be another color in the project that you want to emphasize, whatever it is. It could just be in the picture you're drawing. But for this one, I'm going to use a little bit of this Caron Big Cakes, just because I think this purple does look really nice against this. It sort of pulls out some of those purpley tones in this yarn, and it makes it a little bit easier to see when you're doing the work. So did we have any questions before I actually get started with the demo? I'm gonna just take this moment to pull this little knot out of the yarn. Let's see. Lillian, was there anything I could answer?
We don't have any questions yet.
Okay, great.
Oh,
I just wanted to make sure.
I take that back. One quick question. What size crochet is the question?
Great question. I would say you want to use basically the same size hook as you used on the project. So this is obviously a knit project, so there wasn't a crochet hook. So what I did was I looked at the yarn. Let me pull that back up here. And this was the yarn that was used on the blanket itself. There we are. Flip it all the way over. And if you look at the yarn label, it's got the recommended hook size right on it. So unless the project that you're working into was made with a very different hook size, like somebody used a really big hook for lace or something like that, which honestly would be very difficult to surface crochet into anyway, using the recommended hook size is usually, or at least whatever hook size was used on the project, if it is a crochet project, is going to be your best bet, just to give you a really nice line that fits in with the rest of the project. If you start making a few stitches, and you'll see here in a minute, this is so easy to pull out, and they just look too big or too small, then you just can switch out your hook size. For this one, I am using a 5mm 8 hook, US 8 by Susan Bates, which you can also, I believe, pick up at Michael's. So to begin your surface crochet, like I say, you just need to decide where you're going to go in your blanket, decide, sort of plot out where you want to draw your item or your letter or whatever it is. And then we've got our yarn right here. And I'm just going to go ahead, no yarn on my hook or anything, and I am going to stick my hook right through my fabric, knit or crochet wherever I want that surface crochet line to begin. So let's just arbitrarily go ahead and pick right here in this spot. And I'm going to stick my hook all the way through the fabric there, so it's sticking out the back, as you can see. And then that's where I'm going to take my yarn here and get it into the right position above my hands and not underneath my arms. And find that end. And we want to make sure to leave at least a good 6 inches or so that we can weave that in when we're done. We want to make sure that that end is nice and secure. And then we're just going to yarn over, just lay the yarn right over that hook and pull that loop right to the front of your fabric. Oops, and it fell off, not a big deal, that happens. Put it back on. There we go, and try again. Pull it right on through. So now we have this loop on the right side of our fabric, and we've got our end on the back, and also our working yarn is sticking out of the back. And at this point, I like to keep a little grip with my non-hook hand on both of those ends, just to add a little tension to that loop itself and keep it the right size, and so that I can find it as I come back for the next stitch. So now we're ready to start our surface crochet, and we can literally take off in any direction on this fabric we want. We could draw X's, we could draw O's, we could just outline the zigzag if we wanted to, adding some pinstripe detailing to the zigzag. So let's just follow the line of the fabric for now, and we'll just jump our hook basically 1 stitch away. You can look at your fabric. You can see there's a stitch. So there's going to be a good sized hole right there to stick our hook through. So we just put our hook right in the direction we want that line to start going. We want to make sure to yarn over with the end attached to the skein. That's what always happens to me. I always end up grabbing that tail instead. So take your time, make sure you've got the right end of the skein there, and pull that loop forward to the front of the fabric again. You can just take your time. If it catches the loop of the project you're working on, go ahead and pull that separate there. There we go. So now we have 2 loops on the hook, but I'm going to pull the one I just made right on through like a slip stitch. So if you're familiar with crochet, that's just a slip stitch. We just pull it right on through. So now we're back to 1 loop on our hook. And you can see we've got, if I pull up a little closer, it might be a little easier to see there, the color difference. You can see we've got that purple loop right there. It almost looks like another knit stitch right on top of our fabric. That's what those stitches are going to look like. So from there, we just continue in the direction we want to go, whether that's continuing down in this direction or taking off in another direction. You just need to play with it a little bit and start drawing your lines. So I'll pull this one up and through. So you just pull it through and then pull it right through the other loop that was on your hook, like so. And like I say, you can keep going different directions. If you want to, you can vary the length of those loops. I always like to start out making those loops about the same size as the stitches, but you can get creative. There's no reason you have to stick to that. You could pull that loop up nice and high and jump over several stitches and draw some really long lines with this. This is one of those techniques that it's almost more of a concept than anything else that you can take and really get creative with. There we go, let me pull that through. See, there's a nice long loop. Now, this is something I wouldn't recommend if you're going to do it for babies or something like that, because there is a bit of space there that can get their fingers caught in, and I know that's something people worry about a lot. But if this was for an adult piece or an art piece or a wall hanging, you can really have some fun with the sizes of those loops and take off in any direction. And if you make a loop and you say, ugh, you know what, I don't like that long loop, all you need to do is pull your hook out, come back down here, and give it a little tug. And that loop will pull right on out, just like any other crochet stitch. All you have to do is give it a little pull and it all goes away. And you can pull the whole thing back out, start again if you want to. If you realize you started in the wrong spot, it's not going the way you want to use a different color, whatever the issue is, you can go ahead and switch it up. And of course, if you wanted to, you could switch to a new color. You could do outlines. You could do, just outline your letters. You could, like I say, draw pictures. The options are really pretty limitless. So we've been drawing down this way. So let's go ahead and have to sorry, it's a big old blanket here on my lap. I need to keep adjusting it just a little bit. So now let's take off the other direction. Let's go this way. Let's say we want to head back up this way. Not a big deal. We just move our hook to where we want to draw that next line. Again, make sure you get the working side there and not that tail. And pull it through. and just pull it through right for a chain, like so. So you can draw straight lines, you can draw curves, you can draw geometrics. I was just thinking right before we started this class, how beautiful would it be to take a simple knit piece like this or a crochet piece with maybe a plain background and really use surface crochet to draw anything. You could replicate Starry Night, or you could, you know, anything. You could do beautiful waves or palm trees. You could really create whatever it is, whatever symbol or letter or image is meaningful to you or your gift recipient with this technique. You just keep drawing it right on top. And like I say, from the back, you just get sort of almost like a stitched line of that color that you'll see on the back. So this is a technique that you'll be able to see from the other side, but if you want to achieve this look and you really, really don't want to see it from the other side, I do have an alternative for that too. However, let's finish this one up first. So like I say, that's it. That's essentially the entirety of surface crochet. You're just drawing on top of your fabric using your hook. So when it's time to finish this off, what do? You say, I've finished my letter, I have finished my drawing, I finished whatever it is. What you're going to need is a pair of scissors, which thankfully I did bring over here. And I'm not going to pull this hook out yet. If I wanted to pull it out, I might secure it. If you're worried about that falling out on that last stitch, you can secure it with a stitch marker here. These are Clover stitch markers, also available at Michael's. So I'm going to come over to the back here. I know I'm done drawing, and I want to leave another 6 inches or so I can weave in that final end. So I'm going to go ahead and cut myself a good length of yarn there. Then I'm going to come back to the front here. Get that stitch marker out of the way, put my hook right back in that loop, and then if I have another little section I want to draw, I can go into there. But what I want to do now is I want to go ahead and just pull up on that loop, the one that's on the hook, because I'm done drawing for now. Go ahead and pull that all the way through so that now I've got that end on the front of my fabric. You can see here if I pulled it through, I just cut it and I pulled it through from the back all the way through that last stitch to the front. So to finish it off, I'm going to need a yarn needle. If you are new to crochet or knitting, these are, besides the hook and the yarn, probably the next tool you'll need is a yarn needle. It's a lot like a sewing needle, but as you can see, it's got a much bigger eye there that fits the yarn. And these come in different sizes too, because of course there are different sizes of yarn. So we're just going to get our yarn in the needle here. I always find it's easier to fold over that edge before I put it through the eye, but everybody does it a little differently. There we go. And then we'll come over here and I'm just going to send, I'll pull that a little bit closer here. I'm going to send that needle right back in that same hole. You can see where that last stitch where I pulled it up through. If I send the needle right back into that exact same hole, then you can see it grabs that last loop. You can sort of straighten it out. If you don't like the way it lays, flip it over. There we go, give it a little tug and boom. Now that last loop is secured. It's not going anywhere. You've finished off your line, nice and clean, and you've got your 2 ends there in the back that you can go ahead and weave in. And you can just carefully weave those into the same color or into your projects, whatever you like. So I did see a quick question, I don't know if it's a quick one or not, but I did see a question pop up, at least one. So Lillian, was there some questions I could answer?
Yeah, we have a couple of questions. Lisa asks, what was the first Caron cake color?
Oh gosh, I have no idea. I wish I knew. That would be cool. Oh, the first one I'm using.
Yeah, yeah.
I thought you meant ever. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm so
No, pop quiz.
Ever. I'm like, oh gosh, I have no idea.
Do you know your history of Caron cakes?
That would be great, right? That would be impressive. Unfortunately, I'm not quite that impressive, huh? This is sugar plums. Sugar plums is what the blanket itself is made out of. And then for the surface crochet, let's see, this one is called grape jelly. Isn't that a great name for this one? It does look very yummy. It's making me hungry. It's lunchtime here. Okay, sorry about that.
No, it certainly also makes me feel hungry. It's perfect color for using on icing, I think.
Yes, yeah.
There's also a couple of more questions. Barb asks, I'm writing Emily on my project. Should I fasten off, or is there a way to top stitch letters with spaces continuously? I
think you'd probably want to go ahead and finish off, just because you've got you know, that loop on top, you'd have to basically cut it to pull that end through. If you wrote it in cursive, you could keep going, but for the individual letters, you'd probably want to break off each one. I think that's going to be a little bit cleaner look in the back too, if it's something where the back is going to show.
Wonderful. Okay, and there's just one last question, which I think, sorry if I'm saying this wrong, Rihanna from Michael's might be able to answer better than me. Is there a link from Michael's to YouTube for any chevron blanket for a video tutorial?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I will go ahead and look.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, and I guess we'll have to figure out how to get a tutorial for this one up too. It is a really beautiful blanket, isn't it? You can take a closer look at it here. I don't have the actual written pattern in front of me because I was just concentrating on the surface crochet today, but it does look like it's primarily stockinette worked with some increases and decreases there, and then it looks like a garter stitch edge for those who are interested in the blanket itself. It is really pretty. And it's made, once again, for those who are wondering about the blanket, it's made with the Caron cakes in Sugar Plums, which is really pretty. That's a great, great colorway, isn't it? That one's so pretty. So relaxing. It's a very, very relaxing colorway, I think. Excuse me. I did see a question just popped up. How would this look on garter stitch? I don't have a big garter stitch swatch in front of me, but we do have this little border. So let's go ahead and see what we can do in this tiny little border here for a second. And this too will give me another chance to demonstrate how to get it started. So we're gonna pretend this little garter stitch border here is our big old field of garter stitch. And let's go ahead and just sort of pick this point right here. And oof, keep putting the yarn under my arm. I need to put it above my arm. There we go. So from the wrong side of our fabric, we will go ahead and yarn over. Just literally lay it over the hook and pull that loop right to the front. There we go. And I'll just sort of take off this direction for a couple stitches. And you can see here right on the edge, it's a lot easier. I don't necessarily need to pull it over. I can stick my hook through, grab it. And the more you do it, the easier it'll get. A little bit of practice here. Just gonna get a few stitches in so we can kind of get an idea of what that looks like on the garter stitch. And I know I'm running through these stitches pretty quick, but it's just this same stitch over and over again, just to grab it from the back and pull it through to the front and through the loop that was on the hook. So there you go, you can see a little bit. Sorry, it's not a bigger swatch, but I think it gives you a little idea of what that looks like on the garter stitch. I think that looks pretty good. Is it a little looser for top stitching? Yeah, you want to keep it a little bit loose. You can kind of play with the size of the loops. Like I say, sometimes you'll make a loop that's a little too big, and it's not a big deal. You just pull that one out, get your hook back in the previous one. So tension, it is a pretty personal thing. I tend to have a pretty loose tension myself in general anyway. Some people just naturally do hold things tighter. But you just want to, yeah, just keep it a little bit loose. You don't want it obviously flopping around on top of the fabric. You want it right in there, but I wouldn't try and work it too tight because that will pull that color down into the fabric. And especially in something like garter stitch, it's going to make it a lot harder to see. So I think that answered that one. I can only see the first few words of each question, so I'm kind of guessing on those. Does that answer most of the questions, Lillian?
Yes, that's perfect. And for those joining on their phones, I'm just dropping the link to the pattern into the chat now.
Yes, and for looking for the links, please do check the chat.
Yeah, and if you are joining from a desktop computer, then you can download the PDF directly as well.
Yep. Yes, so there is a free PDF for this pattern. And I don't know if Lillian's shared it. There's some links to, there is a link rather to Moogly blog right now where I've written up some further information on each of these, just supplemental stuff that I had, and some more information on the Caron Cake Off if you want to check that out as well.
I'll add that into the chat now as well.
Oh, thank you very much. So yeah, we just, like I say, if you decide you don't like it, it's not working out, it's not a big deal. One of the great things about this technique, you just give that yarn a tug and it all goes away. And you can start over, no harm, no foul. So like I said, that's the basic way. That is the way to do surface crochet. But there is a sneaky another way to get this look that might work better for some projects. And this, you know, it just depends on what you're trying to draw, and it depends on what you're trying to make. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to take that, you know, same purple color of yarn here, And I'm not going to attach it to the yarn right away. I'm going to go ahead and I just put a slip knot. Let me get that focused a little bit there. There we go. I've just put a slip knot on my hook like you do to start any crochet or knit project. And then I'm just going to, if I can there, grab it. I'm going to do just a long chain. So chaining is just yarn over and pull a loop through. Yarn over and pull a loop through. Yarn over and pull a loop through. And it makes this long chain. And you can see here, the top there, it looks like a knit stitch. It also looks like that surface crochet we've been doing. So if I do a really long chain, and I'd want to do a pretty long one, because you can adjust it after the fact, but I'm just going to do a little guy here for now. And I'm going to go ahead and cut it. And if I were doing this for real, I might not cut it, depending on how big the line I'm trying to make is. But in order to make it a little easier to demo with here today, I'm going to go ahead and cut it. And I'm going to go ahead and finish off that last stitch there so it's secure. And then what I can do is, if you want to, like I said, this is a technique that's great if you're having trouble just getting your lines to lay correctly, or you want to do something that you think the actual regular surface crochet is going to be a little too tricky for. What you can do is you take this chain and then you can lay it on top of your project and you can make that shape. And you may want to use pins of some kind, you know, this is a sewing needle, but not necessarily a pin, but you could pin it in shape, pin it down into whatever shape you want to make, whether, you know, it's a circle or cursive, letter, drawing, whatever it is. And then with the needle, not with the pins, but with the needle, you can take those ends. I'm just going to go ahead and get that on there again. There we go. And then pretending for, again, just for the purpose of demo here, let's say that's where I want to start that line. I can go in from front to back. And then I can actually sew that line right into place. So you can see there, I'm just bringing that yarn needle right back to the front of my fabric, like so. And then right inside that chain, I can lay it out exactly where I want it to go. And that's awesome for like super, you know, this is a great technique, especially too, if you need to make super tight turns that you need to lay really smoothly and roundly, if you will, nice smooth curves. That can be a little trickier with surface crochet. You can see, you just tack it down with the yarn needle and you can totally adjust as you go, draw those beautiful lines, and you can just sew it right down onto the fabric. Like so. There we go. I'll pull that out of the way. So you can see by sewing it down, you get, pull up our other little simple here, pretty much the same look. It's going to sit up a little bit more on top of the fabric, but depending on what you're trying to draw, this may be a slightly easier technique that really does give pretty much the same look, but just a different way of achieving that might be easier for you, again, depending on what you're trying to draw. So it's not exactly surface crochet, but it is surface crochet in a weird way that just gives you another possibility for icing on your cake. So did we have any more questions before I move on to talk about tassels just a little bit?
We do have a question from Barb. She asks, about the crochet hook size, do you use the one on the Caron cake label?
I did for this project, yes, because, well, for one thing, I could see that it fit this fabric really well. I took a couple stitches with it here in the regular surface crochet, and I could see that those stitches were pretty close in size to this one, and they fit the fabric well. I would say using the hook size recommended on the label is always your best jumping off point. But you've seen how easy it is to rip these out. Take a couple stitches, see how it looks. If the stitches seem just a little too small, you can go up a stitch size, or a hook size rather. If they seem a little too loose or you're having trouble and the stitches just seem really loose and wobbly on top, then go ahead and go down a hook size. Because your tension may be different too. Just because it's the hook size recommended on the label doesn't mean you're automatically going to get that same gauge that they list for that hook. If I can bring this back up here for a minute, we'll go ahead and take a look here. This is the square. Try and get that to focus a little bit. Hopefully, tiny, tiny printing. So this is the square that talks about the crochet hook. And of course, you're used to seeing the knitting one too. And of course, it's got that little gauge swatch on there. With crochet, I find it's the personal tension level comes more into play. With knitting, I find more often than not, the knitting needles are a really good way to get you real close to gauge. With crochet, because it's one stitch at a time, it's a little easier to have a different gauge. And there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody has a different gauge Everybody holds their hook and needle a little differently, their hook and yarn. Totally fine. That's not to say you're doing it wrong if you don't get this same gauge. But it is to say you may need to adjust the hook size that you use with that yarn. This is just your jumping off point to get you started. After that, you can use whatever hook is giving you the effect you like. In fact, you may even want to mix that up. We were talking about those great big loops. If you wanted to use a great big hook, as long as you can get it through that fabric, that's going to be the other thing to think about. You need to be able to get it through that fabric in a way that doesn't mess up that fabric or stretch it out in any way. And you don't want it so small that it's piercing the strands of yarn itself, unless, of course, that's the look you're going for. That's the fun of crochet and knitting, right? You can really take off and make it your own and do something unique, do something somebody hasn't done before. But yeah, you just want to kind of fit it to the project. So I found that the recommended hook size does work really well for this. I'd be willing to bet that they knit this blanket with the recommended needle size or darn close. So yeah, it's one of those techniques. Since it's an icing and it's embellishment, you need to just kind of play with it a little bit, but I would start with the hook size recommended on the label for sure.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
Sue was also wondering, how do you hide the tail after fastening off?
Great question. And I don't want to weave it in too much. Like I say, this blanket doesn't belong to me, but basically it's like weaving in any other project. And I personally do find weaving in the ends on knitting to be a little trickier than weaving in the ends on crochet. Crochet tends to be a thicker fabric, which is good or bad depending on the project, but it's a lot easier to weave in the ends with because you've got more places to hide it. So for weaving in these ends, if you are using a different color like this and you don't want it to show up inside your project itself, you really just kind of need to take it and weave it back into that surface crochet itself. So that's where you really want to use up your full 6 inches of tail there if you can. I know a lot of us will weave in those first 3 inches or so, and then you're like, that's good enough, and you cut it off. You really want to take your time and use as much of that length as you can and just weave it in under those other stitches. One way to help it be really secure is to, I'm going to see if I can get a really good focus on this. I'm going to go, you can see here, I'm going under that strand, and that's how we normally might weave things in. But when you get to the end, when we've woven in a few more inches of it, so to speak, if you go back and you go through, let's see if I can get that centered there. You go through the strand itself, and this is easier too if you've got a sharper yarn needle. This one looks to be pretty dull, honestly. But if you can go through the strand, and in particular, go through the center of the strand that you've just been sewing with. So I want to go back through what I've just pulled through here, what's still attached needle. I'm going to try and pierce that strand if I can before I bury that end. I don't know, I hope you can see that. I know it's a tiny little thing there, but hopefully you can see I've gone through that strand itself. When I pull that end through, that is going to do a much better job of locking it in. So I would say one thing to keep in mind is that the slicker the yarn, the more you're going to want to spend time weaving that end in. You're going to want to look and see if there's some wool content. The Caron cakes, for example, this one right here has, I believe, 80% acrylic, 20% wool. So it's got a little bit more grip, and that will help keep that a little bit more secure as well, just because wool has basically scales that stick to each other, sort of almost like that. And that will help keep that end woven in a little bit more securely. But if you've got a slicker yarn, for instance, this Big Cakes is, I believe, yes, 100% acrylic. So it's a little bit smoother. So you'll want to weave in maybe just even a little bit more length on the acrylic one, just to keep that really secure. But this was kind of a quick job here. But if you really want to take your time, maybe get a sharper yarn needle than this one I happen to have here today. That will help you weave in those ends just a little bit better. And then, of course, if it is a close color, or if it's something where people aren't going to see the back, then you can weave into whatever stitches you like, just as you normally would.
That is a great tip. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Were there any other questions then, or was that it for now?
We have a couple of people that are interested in just seeing the back of the work.
Absolutely. Well, this is again, make sure I'm understanding correctly. This is the back of the blanket in general. You can see it's just kind of the opposite side of the stockinette there. But let me pull up that big full M I did, because that'll give a better representation here. So you can see, get an idea again. Sorry, great big blanket, so cozy. There we go. Here is the front of the work. There is the M. I just kind of, like I say, I just went right along with the chevron for this one. It was an easy way to do that one. And then this is again without the ends woven in, but it would be just that technique of bringing them back through. You can see there, it's just a nice fine line. And the straighter you draw your lines on the front, the straighter the lines on your back will be. But again, that's just a matter of taking your time and really placing each stitch. And if you don't like the way it looks, you can always pull a couple of them out and redo them. I hope that's a good view there. Here we go. So that's what the back looks like. Hopefully that answers that one.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. Is that it?
There's one more challenging question,
Okay.
which might make more sense to you. Lilia asks, where can I get a pattern for a sky mask for a man? Is that related at all to today?
I don't think it is.
Okay.
And I'm not sure what a sky mask is. Is that like a sleeping mask?
I'm not sure either.
I need more information on what a sky mask is. I'm sorry.
Okay, we'll wait for more information.
Sorry about that. Yeah, okay. So anyway, how are we doing on time also, by the way?
You are doing great on time. We are at 37 past.
Okay, thank you. There's been a few times when I've gotten to like, 55 minutes still, and it's like, oh no, we still have so much to cover. So I always like to check in. Alrighty, so the other things, there's so many other things you can do to your blankets, but one of the fun things that I thought would be really great on this one would be to add tassels, or even pom-poms for that matter. But tassels are a really great way to dress up any project, and they are really popular right now. So you can add tassels to blankets. Normally, I would say on the corners. That would be my first instinct on where to put your tassels. This one wants to go crazy on me. There we go. But, I've seen some really unique patterns this past year. 2020 has been a unique year, and it's also presented some really unique crochet and knit projects. And I've seen people putting tassels right in the middle of their patterns, right in the middle of their blankets, usually maybe a little bit smaller than this one. But it's just another embellishment. And how fun would it be to put these, at certain points on the chevron or something like that. This is that contrast color again. And it's acrylic, so again, it wants to be a little bit crazier. I find that the wool just wants to lay a little nicer in our pom-pom here, but here's the pom-pom made in the same yarn as the blanket, but because it is self-striping, you're going to get some really fun color play there. So to make a pom-pom, there are tools you can use. There are, you could cut a piece of cardboard. The concept itself is really pretty simple. This is one of my favorite tools for making pom-poms, and this is the tassels. And this is the Clover tassel maker. And they come in a couple different sizes. This one's the large, and I already have it set to the biggest size. But basically, these two little white knobs, you can loosen those up. And it takes a minute. You just gotta go loosen them back and forth. And then once it's loose enough, there we go, you can adjust the size. Oh my goodness, it takes a lot of loosening today. There we go. So you can adjust that size down. You sort of match up those notches on the side to help you get to a particular size you may or may not want there. And then you can open it up to whatever size you want that tassel to be. So since this is a blanket, I picked a pretty darn big size, sort of the second to biggest there. So I'm just going to tighten up these little white knobs. And then, like I say, you could use a tool like this, or you can just use a piece of cardboard, or even your hands if you were extremely well coordinated. And this is the Clover tassel maker. Simple name, does the job. I'm going to go ahead and grab some of our yarn here. And then what you want to do is just start wrapping the yarn around the maker from top to bottom, or bottom to top. Doesn't really matter, whatever works for you in your hands. So it's a big guy, trying to kind of get it all on camera here. There we go. So you can see I'm just holding it down at one end, and I'm just going to start wrapping around. And if I were doing this for the blanket, I would want to count the number of wraps I do so that all of my tassels will end up the same size. But whatever you like. You can make skinny tassels, you can make great big chunky tassels, you can make teeny tiny tassels. It is totally up to you. You can use a contrast yarn, the same yarn. a whole bunch of scrap yarns. How fun would it be to do a blanket in some nice, you know, some of these more muted colors of Caron cakes, and then take a really bright one and make the tassels out of that. I can't imagine how fun would it be to do like a white or a gray blanket or something with rainbow tassels. I think that would be so pretty. All right, so we are working our way around here. That looks like a good amount of yarn for a tassel. One thing to remember is that it's going to be double thick. We're going to be bending this in the middle. So the tassel won't be this thick, the tassel will be double this thick. So what I want to do now is I have done all my winding, so I'm going to go ahead and cut my yarn. I'm not going to worry too much about getting an exact length. We're going to trim it up when it's done. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take about a foot or so length of yarn, cut it again, and then I'm going to go ahead and do that one more time. Again, about a foot length. And you could use different colors of yarn for this. Really have fun with it. Tassels are another one of those things you can get really creative with. So what I want to do now is I'm going to make the string that will be on top of the tassel. So if I pull up one of these here, one of these finished ones, they always look like little octopuses to me. This will be the string that's up here. This is the string you would weave into your project or tie onto your project or attach to your project, however you're going to do it. So if you wanted to, you could use the same color as the tassel. If I were using a contrast tassel to sew into a blanket, I might use the blanket color for this portion, just so it hides in that blanket a little bit better. So then I'm going to take that yarn and I'm just going to go around all the yarns on the tassel maker, the whole thing. So go ahead, get it underneath there. There we go. I just want to straighten out those ends a little bit and make sure they're all down inside there. Okay, so now right about the middle of that tassel maker, and there's little notches if you want to use them, or you can just eyeball it. I'm going to go ahead and tie my yarn in a couple of good knots. And the way I like to do it, and everybody does it their own way, but I like to basically make a basic knot. And I don't know the names of knots, I'm sorry, but you just go around once and then go around again. So basically like a regular knot, but you've twisted it twice. And these knots just seem to stick a whole lot better. So you just pull down the ends like you would for a regular knot, any other knot you're making there, and pull it nice and tight. And that second twist seems to help it just stay a whole lot better. Ah, Julia says it's a surgeon's knot. Thank you, Julia. Didn't know it was so fancy. So then we just flip it over again. I like to give it another knot on the other side, same way, just to get it extra secure. Then I'm going to do it once more. And then this will be the final knot there on top of our tassel, like so. There we go. So that is all set. Now what we need to do is we need to cut it off the tassel maker. So you can see, again, there are lots of different tools, or you could be using a big square of cardboard, whatever works for you. But this tool has little notches on top, which I love. And those are for guiding your scissors right along the top there. And we're just going to cut both ends. Probably would have been easier with a slightly longer bladed pair of scissors, but this is what I have sitting on this table. So there we go. We get through that end. Come down to the other end. I like to put a little tension. As you can see, I'm just giving that a little pull so that they all pull nice and straight. And we'll cut right across the top of that one. Ah. Again, longer bladed scissors would have been wise, but we'll get there. Chomp, chomp, chomp. Scissors are pretty though, right? Possibly not the most practical pair I have, but very pretty. There we go. Alrighty, we've got it cut off. So now we want to find those strings again from our knot so that we can make sure that's on top of our tassel. You can see I'm just going ahead and folding it right over. And I like to give it a good shake, make it nice and even, give it a little comb with my fingernails, make it look nice. Basically make it look like a little cousin it. That's a reference for everybody, right? I remember whose cousin it is. You want just that sort of little mop shape right there. And that's when we're going to take our other piece of string that we cut, and we're going to basically tie it around to create that little circle on top, the head for our tiny little tassel octopus. So there are, again, lots of different ways to do this. Some people like to loop the yarn a special way. I find if I wind it around a couple times and then tie it, I can get a good adjustment. You just want to take your time and make sure it looks nice and that you've caught all those little ends. So however you like to do it. I think I probably do it a little differently every time, to be honest. I'm trying to do it on camera here so you can make sure to see it. Basically, we're just going to put our little knot right there. So again, I'm going to make that surgeon's knot now that I know the name. Very cool. Thank you again for that, Julia. And tie that nice and tight there. And then I'll flip it over, do the same thing again. This is a really fun idea too. I've seen people do similar things like this for Halloween decorations. Halloween's coming up. If you want to, if you enjoy making tassels, you make them to add to your Caron cake off and find that you're really enjoying the process. A little bit of white yarn and a couple of googly eyes that I'm sure you can pick up at Michael's would be pretty fun. And it's a fun craft for the kids then too. So I'm just making a double knot here to make sure this is nice and secure. There we go. Give it a little zhuzh, and there's our tassel. Now the ends, as you can see, are a little bit of a hot mess. So again, probably a sharper pair of scissors than these, but you just want to hold that, sort of get it nice and even there at the bottom. I sort of tend to hold it like that, and then trim it off into a nice little haircut. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Tassels are exuberant, they are fun, they are lively. They are not generally perfection. If you want to make them perfect, you can try for it, go for it. But I'm just going to trim this guy down here so that it makes a little bit more sense. More of a quarantine haircut. There we go. And there we have it. Give it a little shake, get all those little ends of yarn out there. And now you've got a tassel. So like I said, you can have a lot of fun with tassels. I think colorful tassels on, you know, a really simple blanket can really add a lot of life. If you've made one of those, excuse me, multicolored blankets that are really popular right now, the sampler blankets, you could definitely, you know, do some really fun things, get some crazy texture in there, put it right in the middle of the blanket, add some other colors, add some other Caron cake colors, and just have all kinds of fun. And then, like I say, if you're enjoying making tassels, they make pretty fun little Halloween ghosts too. So that is how to use this sort of tassel maker. Like I say, there is lots of other tassel makers out there, or you could even just use a piece of cardboard or your hand. But I do enjoy using this one. It makes it a little bit easier. So did we have any questions on tassels?
We do have a question from Julia asking, could you add bubbles with surface crochet?
Oh gosh, you know, that is a great question. It's not one I've tried to do before, but let's pull up some yarn and see what happens. No better way to find out than to give it a try, right? So let's pull up. Let me find another corner on our blanket here. I know there's at least two more. There we go. And we'll pull up some yarn. And I'm thinking about it. And I think you may be able to, because, and the reason I say that is because surface crochet, and I want to keep it simple because we are working on a knit blanket here. And I want to make sure all our knitters can follow along here. So I didn't want to add too many fancy crochet stitches, but you don't have to just stick with the chain stitch essentially for surface crochet. That is, surface crochet is essentially chaining along the top or working slip stitches across the top of the fabric. But you can, let me grab that, make sure I got the right end of the yarn there, and pull that up through. If I pulled this through and I didn't pull it through for a chain, I could make stitches. But now that I think about it, sorry, we're experimenting live, so we're seeing how it goes. What I'm going to want to do is keep the end of the yarn on top. And here's why. I'm going to go ahead and stick my yarn or my hook in the fabric. I'm going to go under a stitch. I'm going to pull up that loop. And the reason I need to do that is that my working yarn is in the front of the fabric, because we're going to need to be able to pull each yarn over and do those loops on the front of our fabric. So at the end of this, I would just take this tail end and use that yarn needle to go ahead and sew it down into the back. So if we're working along the surface here, let's go here. We're going to need to, let's see, we'll need a chain. So we've got a little bit of height, and I'm going to go under the next stitch. So I'm sticking my hook through the fabric. Let me show that again. I'm sticking my hook through the fabric and then back out the front, okay? Now I'm going to yarn over and pull up a loop, and now I can yarn over and make another stitch. So now I've got a single crochet on top of our fabric. So if I wanted to add a bobble, let's see, I would probably yarn over first because bobbles are typically made with double crochets. Go into wherever I want to put that bobble, go into the front, and come back out the back, from the back with the hook there, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. Now I've got 2 loops left on the hook, and there are different size bobbles. They're made with a variety of sizes of double crochets. But then I'm going to go back down just around that same stitch again to start my next double crochet. And let's just make it a 3-1. It'll be a small bobble. So I'll yarn over, go back around that stitch again, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. And then to make a bobble, I will yarn over and pull through all those loops. And there we go. So then I would want to find probably the next nearest stitch and either do a slip stitch or another single crochet to sort of hold that bobble down. The key to doing bobbles and really getting them to pop in crochet is to have short stitches on either side. So whether that's a single crochet or another slip stitch, but there you go. You could get a bobble right on top there. And yes, you've still got that little end, but like I say, you can put that on a yarn needle, sew it right through to the back and weave it in end. And there we go. We just put bobbles on top of our surface crochet. So yes, you can.
Amazing.
Yay.
I'm wondering what other ideas people have, whether they'd try beading, or Kat says she would like to do 3D flowers.
Oh, yes. You could do all kinds of things. Once you've got that yarn pulled through to your front of your fabric, like I say, whether you have to do it, from kind of going around the stitch so that you can get both ends up there, or you're just pulling it through to the front, really the sky's the limit. You could draw all sorts of things. And absolutely, if you pre-strung some beads on here, or you used a crochet hook to put the beads on the yarn as you work, you get beads on top of your crochet this way, all kinds of things. Like I say, it's a really neat technique, right? You can do so many fun things with this and really take off. And again, boom, pull it all out and it's all gone away if you don't like it.
It really is like icing a cake. You can just use so much creativity. We do have one question here asking, what's the best way to secure and attach the tassel?
Let's see. Let's go ahead and pull a tassel up. You've got the 2 ends here. Remember when that was the first string we tied on, is the very top. And after that, depends on the project, but basically you've got your strings and you could just sew it in. If this was something where, sometimes you make something, blanket's probably not the best example, but if you've got something where you want to be able to take the tassels off, say to wash it, tassels are a little bit harder to wash than other items can be because they can come apart. Then what you can do is you can sew it to a button and slip the button through there. That might be fun if you were using a tassel in place of a pom-pom on top of a hat. Otherwise, you would just use your yarn needle and sew those ends right in wherever you want the tassel to be, and then weave those ends in as if it was any other, bit of yarn on your project. So you can just use your yarn needle and attach them wherever you like, or tie them on, or use a button or something like that if you do want them to be temporary.
The button idea is a very good tip. Melissa also says that she likes putting tassels on lobster claws so that they're removable.
Ah, there you go. That's fun. Yeah, that would be another great way to do it. Absolutely. Yeah. Tassels are so versatile, right? Yeah, you could string them on a garland. You can do all kinds of things. I love them.
Very cool. Does anyone else have questions for Tamara today?
My shiny overhead phone here. Looks like we're probably good on that then. So yeah, like I say, that's the basics of surface crochet. But the possibilities are endless. Pull those loops up, make other stitches. I'm sure people who have more of a knitting mind can figure out some ways that you can do some really neat knit effects with this too. It's just another way to manipulate the yarn and do some more creative things with it. And then of course, the icing ideas. There are so many icing ideas, you guys. This is just the first class of 8. I'm teaching 2 more. I believe Marley Bird is teaching 2. Mikey from the Crochet Crowd is going to be teaching 2, and Sarah's going to be teaching 1 too. And her hat is so cute. But we're all going to be teaching different ways that you can add embellishments to your projects. And again, this is not required for the Caron Cake Off. I just want to be, clear on that. You don't have to add icing to your project to enter them in the Caron Cake Off, but it is a really fun way to dress up your projects and have some more fun with it. And like I say, with the holidays coming and things, handmade gifts, I think, are going to be huge this year. We're all crafting a little bit more, so you can definitely add those personal touches. So it looks like Pam might have some ideas, but I can only see a little dot, dot, dot.
Yeah, she said she's got a lot of ideas spinning in her head.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I think you've got everyone very inspired. Thank you for such a wonderful class.
Oh, thank you. Awesome. I have no idea what time it is. I apologize. Oh, my screen, I've got the camera on screen, so I don't have a clock.
We just have a couple of minutes to go, so
Okay.
I can go ahead and sign off if no one has any more questions.
Okay.
But there's lots of ideas spinning around for everyone, and a lot of great feedback. Thank you for being such a wonderful teacher today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to the next one next week.
Absolutely. So to everyone out there, thanks for joining us today for this live community classroom with Michaels. We would love to see your WIPs, so share your work with Make It With Michaels and hashtag Inspirations. And just a reminder that you can find more classes on michaels.com and the recording from today's class at michaels.com/classes. And don't forget to head on over to michaels.com/Caron Cakes Contest. Sorry, that was michaels.com/Caron Cakes Contest. Quite a tongue twister. You can learn more there about the Great Caron Cake Off, and you can enter to win.
And get all these free patterns.
Absolutely. There's a recipe book, so you can download them and stitch away.
Yes. All right. Well,
Wonderful.
thank you so much for having me. It was great to be with you guys today. I hope you have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.